Okay, Deb's lesson day. So any questions before we look at the videos? Because you sent one of your horse finder things and the other of Callie, kind of an update on both girls. Um, how do you think it's going, or do you have any questions that
I
are
feel that I've made progress more with finer things than with Callie. Callie is just little, itty bitty improvements where I guess it's probably big improvements and I just don't see it as that way. But finer things in her neck, I think I've really gotten to a healthy place where we can start establishing some contact.
oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, if
And
she's not ducking behind the bit, you're definitely making progress with her.
well, I always try to think of everything as being in a positive light. So not having an arena and horses that are muzzled and then you go to ride and all they want to do is put their head down and eat grass. So I'm like, oh, good. She's putting her head down.
Yeah. And
So
that actually becomes a big question for a lot of people. And what most people are doing is just fighting them on the reins. So do you know some good strategies for dealing with that? Because it's a reality for the
I
reason.
don't fight it at all. We kind of have a conversation. Callie's worse at it than finer things. Finer things just, I give her, I give her, you'll see on the video, I give her enough rein to get close, but not close enough. And then I actually stop and give them permission to get a bite to eat.
Yeah.
And then I use the whip to move
Yeah.
forward. I don't pull on the reins.
Yeah, perfect. Because the real solution to the horse ripping the reins out of your hands, whether it's for grass or because they're falling forward, is use your legs to send them forward. Don't
Yeah.
fight the head. And
Yeah,
then
I don't fight it at all.
also important is do make some time. Give them a timeout where
Yeah,
they can eat grass
I
and then
do.
go back
And
to work.
you'll see with Callie, she asks more frequently than finer things does. And
Sorry.
she'll just stop and go, now? And I'm saying, no, not yet.
Continue.
Continue. That wasn't
Yes.
long enough.
Yes. I have a helper today
I
too.
see that. I locked everybody out of my office. So
I know. I saw one of those memes where they have preparation for your Zoom meeting and they have the cat duct taped to the wall. I go, yep, pretty true. Okay, so let's get to the video. And you have not watched this all the way through either.
not all the way through. I saw, yeah, let's see if I need my glasses or not with this.
So we can look at finer things first.
And
I'm
this is with the
looking
Pivo.
for,
So we'll see if the quality is good. It tracks and it jerks. So see if that's a distraction or not.
oh, there we go. It's pouring rain here, so some of the freezing might be a little bit my
Okay.
internet connection. This is fantastic, Deb. So my initial right off the bat is that she is recovering all of more of a normal use for her pole.
Yes.
Which is huge. I'll try to move us around as needed. So instead of, oh, I covered up the pause button. Hang on. So I would rather see her fall towards long and low rather than, sorry, this is really distracting, rather than overcurl the neck.
Right.
Because that dysfunction of overcurling the neck is what leads to arthritis as well as a whole lot of muscular pain. So the use of her neck is really like almost 100% of the time. She's really using it well.
Good.
Yeah, the sharpness of the way the camera turns, I see that is a little
You
bit.
see, that's
Yeah,
the
it's a
distraction.
little.
I haven't figured out how to fix that yet. So
It's a little bit jerky, but
yeah.
but not bad. Yeah, so just to point out some of the sort of specifics. Where'd my pause button go? I want to get a different, I'm kind of looking for the right angle to hit pause. So, and there I actually paused it. So for her to choose when she falls forward, which she's going to do, for her to choose long and low without tucking the nose backwards, without, over like dropping the pole, over contracting the neck is huge.
Yeah.
Because that I think was a habit for her even when you had no rein contact.
Yes.
Like you couldn't lighten the reins anymore and she would still do it.
Exactly.
So that's huge.
And this is the first time now that I look at it that her neck is more proportionate to her body.
And what did she look like before? That her neck was much shorter?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because that over curling of the neck can actually sort of have the visual effect of find another moment, of making the back look longer.
Yes.
And it's really not the back looking longer, it's the neck looking shorter.
Yes.
Yeah, or it looks like they have a short neck compared to their torso, like they have bad conformation. So right here, and from the perspective of the rider, when you look down from here, you're going to see kind of a stretching. This side has the mane on it, so we can see it down lower. But you'll see from the top that neck lengthening and the bottom of the neck, because the cervical spine is actually coming upward and translating a little backwards with the lift of the back. The bottom of the neck disappears from our view. And so this is great and you can still see all this chronic tightness in the muscle definition, right? So every time you see that muscle get longer, it'll still pop out to the sides for a little while, but lengthening like that right there in that moment, she's in length with her neck.
Yes.
Her pole is being carried level to her withers and her back on a very light rein contact, because you don't get away with much on her.
Not much
before she drops the pole. And you can see the beginning of her torso coming more parallel horizontally to the ground.
Yes.
She's still a little on the forehand, so it's a tiny bit tipped forward, but it's really improving. So the use of the neck should be directly related to this midline of the whole torso becoming more parallel to the ground.
And now that you've frozen it right there, I can see that. I've never seen that with her before.
Yay!
Yay!
I know. So that is
how many years?
I know, but it's really getting through the unique ways that horses compensate. Like that is so intricate and infinitely unique to the horse. How they go about stabilizing their body and doing what we want them to do out of balance we feel like we have to sleuth it out like a detective, right? So we have to start to understand first, what are the ideal mechanics? And then what is it I'm feeling? How is that related to the mechanics? But when horses start to get closer to the optimal coordination in their spine, they all start to feel the same. So it gets easier. What takes the longest period of time is our education, the speed of our own consciousness to decipher what all of those various forces mean and how do we organize them, and then coalesce all of those forces into the singular direction of forward and up. So this is a coalescence of the forward with a tiny bit of up. And right. And so from here, we want more up without losing the forward force, the straight line of forward. That's where you're going to go from here. So the good news is once you get here, you and the horse now have an understanding. You have practice using your aids effectively, how to use them, what direction you use them, how much force, how little force, all of that. So from basic balance into the higher degrees of flexion that take us to collection, what we call collection or high balance, is no different than what you're managing right here. Like, you've got it.
Ah, yay
Yeah.
me.
Yay, you. Absolutely.
Yay,
Yeah.
finer things 20 years later.
I know. I know. Right. I know the first horse, sometimes it takes us a good, I don't know, 10, 20 years to kind of get it right. And mostly because we get pulled off track by so many different concepts, theories, ways of doing things, how we're supposed to do it. And, my biggest question for you is, what did this ride feel like to you compared to how she used to feel?
Yeah. So at the walk, at least,
Yeah.
let's keep it simple. So what I really notice is there's hardly any quote unquote adjustments going on. They're
Mm.
very slight. When I need to use an aid, it's much less.
So minimal use of your aids.
Minimal anything compared to where we started.
So when you give a leg aid, you feel the increase of pushing force.
Yes.
When you use your back, you feel her use her braking force.
Yeah, and we're pretty much in tune.
Mhm.
It's there's not much gray area anymore as to our communication level.
Right. It becomes more subtle.
Mm-hmm.
And by subtle, we also mean she responds.
She responds to a much lighter aid, if that makes it
That's
easier for
exactly,
people to understand.
yes.
It's like we are not separate. We are one functioning unit instead of me constantly navigating what's going on.
Right.
I'm still like that on Plumley, but
No, and that really shows in in the quietness of
Mhm.
this ride. And her ears are always back on you. Like, there's just, maybe it was a nice quiet day at home, but every single stride, her ears are half back, showing how much she's thinking internally into her own body, as well as communicating or ready to communicate with you through the aids.
Yeah, and I'm pretty much, because I technically really don't have an arena. Um, I usually give my horses the choice of direction.
For now, that's fine.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, if we're not too picky about the accurate path of travel, we can achieve the coordination of the body sooner.
That's how I feel about it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel if I can navigate her direction, it's could possibly be a better rider
Yes. And I'm
instead
backing.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. And from here, the next evolution of her balance would be very accurate straight lines, very
Okay.
accurate turns, and very accurate different size circles. Because not only is it going to challenge what you've gained without steering too much, it's also going to refine it.
Right. That would be, I was thinking my next step, because I
Yeah.
did near the end, Joe asked me to go into the shade to see if this thing still worked. And it was rough.
It was rough
trying to get her to go in a straight direction
without losing the balance.
without losing balance. I didn't have a rail next to me to go by. It was me navigating.
Right.
Much more difficult.
And that's how we strengthen the balance. So a path of travel can be used in the early stages to help us feel the sort of lateral forces.
Right.
Or we can completely not steer if the lateral forces are clear to us, and not steering. Like, steering has nothing to do with internal straightness. They're two separate things. So we can use steering to feel internal straightness if we need it, but we can also use not steering to help the horse find the internal straightness faster. It works both ways, so that it's sort of interchangeable, but ultimately we need both to further the development of the body.
Okay.
So I just paused it here because I love that the rain pressure did not increase at all for the halt. And during the halt, she elevated the neck just a little bit.
Yes, I saw that.
That shows you that that is a weak point in her body. So I'm just going to watch the push off. Yeah, she doesn't try extension at all
No.
on the push. She only tried it when you started to ask her to halt.
Yes.
So that's just make a mental note
Okay.
that the emphasis or the advancement of her balance is going to be related to braking specifically for her.
Okay. I'll
Does
write
that
that
make
down.
sense?
Yeah,
So,
totally.
so they show us where they're weak, where they're strong, where they need help. Whoop, there goes the cat. Yeah, she did it again.
Yeah.
So when you ask her to slow, she has a little tendency to push the spine down.
Yes.
So every time they resort to extension, pushing the back down, lifting the neck like she is, what that tells you is they don't have the strength or the coordination or the stability in their back and hindquarters to do it in flexion.
Okay.
So it could be any one of those three things, a combination of those three things. It could be more related to the back muscles, more related to the hindquarter muscles, maybe more related to the mobility of the hind legs coming forward. It could be like, think of braking multidimensionally. Don't just think of it as slowing down.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because then you can use turns creatively to influence the placement of the legs. You can use transitions strategically. You can play with half halts strategically. You can use directions strategically. So you're just trying to get her to explore anything related to braking. Now, the upward transition to trot, a tad, a hair of extension. The upward transition to walk, 0. The upward transition to trot, and that could be related to what I saw with the halt and the braking mechanism or strength of her braking mechanism. So in trot, she's going to need a stronger use of the braking to stabilize the increase of force pushing in trot. Does that make sense?
Yeah. How would I help her with that? Because, trot on her is just such a challenge. It seems to help if I use turns.
So, and that's exactly, your intuition is correct because turns are related to braking.
Okay.
Right? The other way to work on a better trot would be walk halt transitions.
Okay.
So walk halt transitions on a straight line, or you can do a zigzag, like if you wanted to change direction and
Right.
you use the benefits of the turn, but also have straight lines, you could do a zigzag pattern.
Okay.
You could work on it on a circle. You could do walk halt transitions on a circle to get the benefit of both braking and turning.
Okay.
Okay. When she can brake on a straight line, that will be the most difficult for her
It is.
because
It's
you're not,
shattering to me. I mean, it
yes.
just, she just catapults me out of the saddle.
Right. So what she's doing from walk to halt on a straight line is telling you about the body and why she resorts to extension in the walk trot transition as well.
Okay.
Related to the braking. So that's how, like, something as simple as walk halt shows us where the horse needs help, what
Okay.
they're struggling with. And for her, your straightness is fantastic. She keeps the length of her back and neck muscles the entire time, right? She resorts to extension really only on the downward. And
Right.
if you do the upward on a turn, what that does is it helps her find the balance of the downward while you're asking for upward.
And that's where it seems to be, for lack of a better word, the smoothest, the easiest, the less jarring for me is on a turn.
Absolutely. Because when you asked on the straight line, she
Ugh.
resorts a little bit back to extension. But the same is true for the transition from walk to halt on a straight line.
Yes.
So what that tells you is, number one, she goes to extension because it's related to her strength in the balance of braking and pushing. So she's not going to extension because she's crooked laterally.
Not anymore.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, totally.
If she was crooked laterally, you would have attempts at extension within her chosen speed.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you know it's a left-right issue more than it's a sort of front-back issue or speed issue. So you have straightness laterally, and it's only when you request braking or more pushing than she can manage, which is the trot, that she resorts to extension.
Mm-hmm.
So the training program for her, and whether you figure out what to do with groundwork exercises, only riding, a combination of the two, one or the other, doesn't matter. But what you want to do is work on straight on smaller and smaller circles without transitions. If you're on a big circle, straight on a circle with walk halt transitions. When you ask for trot, do it on some degree of a turn. So whatever size circle sort of helped her balance and slow down without resorting to extension gives you the arc of the turn you need to get to trot. How much or how little, how severe or acute does the turn need to be to increase the braking while you push her to trot?
What I have been experimenting with since I have the grass
Mm-hmm.
is I lunge her, straight, then turn, straight, then turn. And she is actually spending a lot of time at the trot trying to get grass. I mean,
Great.
actually getting bites of grass. And I thought, well, that probably is helpful.
Yeah, the other way to do it would be like you're doing with the lunging. And if you're riding, lunging or riding, you can allow her to fall into long and low and then push into trot when she's really deeply long and low in the walk.
Okay.
And
That's
that
what I've been
buys
doing.
you, it buys you a little bit of time between long and low and extension. So
Yes.
she accidentally has to go through balance for at least one stride.
Yeah, we've been doing that on the lunge line and she's getting better and better at it.
Great. You can do the same under saddle. And what
Okay.
you'll need to do is let her fall to long, like what you're trying to do is take her from basic balance in walk through the transition in balance into balance in the trot. That is ultimately your goal. And you're doing a pretty good job. What she's showing is that she's a little weak with the braking. So when you add speed, she resorts to extension to find power.
Yes.
Right? So you want to build up the power by increasing her capacity for braking at the walk halt on circles.
Okay.
While you're doing that, while you're building up that power with braking, you can allow her to fall into long and low on the ground or riding, and then give a quick hard push into trot. Then she's only going to trot a few strides like she's doing with you.
Yeah, she only gets one or two and then it falls apart.
Yeah. And what you might get, like right there where you let the reins go and she was long and low, that would be the perfect opportunity for a trot transition.
Okay.
Right? Because if you ask her right now, while the neck is sort of long and level, she's too close to extension. It's too easy for her. So if you exaggerate the long and low, and then you sort of time the quickness and the force of your trot aid, she's going to be trotting before she can get into extension.
Okay.
That's the goal. And you can do it on a turn or a straight line. And then as soon as she's in trot, if she goes into extension in trot where she wants to break the trot, allow her to break the trot whenever she chooses, because that's another way to strengthen the braking mechanism.
Breaking. Okay. Yeah.
And especially if she wants to slow down with a long neck, you're working the back, even though
Okay.
it was her choice, not your choice. Right. And then what I would do is if you're playing with trot that way under saddle, as soon as she comes back out of trot, she's going to fall back into long and low at the walk. So within a stride or two, if it takes her 5 minutes to get back to long and low, let her have 5 or 10 minutes. But if she falls into long and low within a couple of strides after making a transition back to walk, take that opportunity to kind of surprise her back up into the trot out of long and low again. And so quick upward transitions, because you know for sure she's going to only trot a few strides and then she's going to break to walk.
Mhm.
So part of the way to increase the pushing capacity for sustaining the trot and at the same time build the weaker side of the equation, the braking, would be let her be long and low to avoid extension, really put some energy in your aid. So you
Okay.
sort of like surprise her into the trot a little bit, right? Then do nothing while she's trotting and just let her slow all the way back down to walk. When she's in walk, let her continue to slow down until she's long and low. And then, so I'm sort of taking away the rein contact again.
I was going to say everything else is out the window at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And for her or for any horse that has a tendency towards extension or dropping the pole, the reins are pretty useless anyways. You
Right.
need to build the capacity of the back and the hindquarters. So the more rapid the upward transition, you build the pushing power, right?
Okay.
And then the downward transition, by her choice, she will organize the braking capacity as she gradually slows down to walk and gradually falls forward into long and low at the walk. Once she's in long and low at the walk, she's no longer really working on the braking pushing capacity. So then you take that opportunity, whether it comes in 2 strides or 20 minutes, doesn't matter. You take that opportunity to exaggerate the pushing force back into the trot rapidly.
Okay.
Okay. And as you repeat that, she'll resort to extension because you surprise her at first.
Right.
Don't worry about it. As long as you
Okay.
let her find her way in back into walk and long and low on her own, that will also take away the extension because she'll understand you're working in a pattern.
Yeah, she'll figure it out. Believe
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on
No,
this?
that sounds great. I'm feeling really good with her where we're at.
Yeah. And what I see is she's got the coordination, which is such an important part of the equation. In the walk, you have a lot of consistency in the coordination of basic balance, right?
Good.
So you need to take the walk onto a sidewalk width accurate line or accurate path of travel. So start being more specific, whether it's a straight line, a momentary turn, or a circle. It's a sidewalk that you need to stay in the middle of.
Okay.
And then working on trot, you don't want to try to maintain basic balance just yet because she doesn't have the power.
Okay.
So you're going to build, she has the coordination, but she doesn't have the power or the strength. So you're going to build the strength by letting her find the coordination with less help. But you're going to ask for more push. You're going to let her decide the braking so it's still correct. And then repeat that process rapidly to build strength.
Okay.
Okay. And what will also happen is as the trot gains power, it's also going to be more comfortable for her. And little by little, she's going to start offering to maintain the trot longer.
Okay.
But don't make her do it. That'll just be the natural evolution of building the strength. Okay. Anything else?
Nope. No, it's good with her.
Okay. So let me exit that one and go to this one. Oh, it worked. Yay. Okay, because this is a different format. I got to find different arrows. Hang on.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. Okay, so what are you feeling as you ride Callie? Where do you feel it's good? How do you know where it's good, and how do you feel her struggle?
She, as you know, she's a super thinker. She's always listening and thinking. The struggle is still what I feel under the saddle. I feel like her back is an extension. Her neck has gotten better. And she still feels, she's kind of the opposite of finer things. She feels stiff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's
it's
like
funny that
going from a fish to a board.
Yes. And so kind of with the two different types of horses, which there's really only two types, you have one of each. I call them the wiggly horses and the stiff horses. So what you've done with finer things is she feels great, and wiggly equals unstable.
Right.
So getting a wiggly horse stable, they actually work with you more because it's where the body should be.
Right.
So what you've done is help her manage all those various directions of force into a stable forward force with a little bit of up. With Callie, what you're getting is a mild version of extension.
All the time.
You're realizing that through the instability under the saddle, harder to sit, and the stiffness that you feel on Callie is the excessive muscle contraction related to an unstable spine. So where finer things got wiggly, she got stiffer for the very same reasons. Yep. And that's why I say there's those two essential types of horses. It's muscular contraction, it's excessive muscular contraction either way. But wiggly horses can just kind of like take a whole bunch of different directions.
Yeah, I agree.
And cope with it. Where Callie is the type of horse that when she's in extension, you feel very directly the excessive muscle contraction.
Yes.
Because she can't manage a lot of different directions of force. She just tightens.
She does. That's her response to everything.
So it's kind of like two different people on a hill, right? If you lose your balance, say you're trying to run down a hill, some people run faster and get looser in order to stabilize, and other people brace and stiffen and sort of slow down in order to stabilize, right? So that's kind of what horses do. So where let me play it a little more. And it happens quickly, but there, she's in extension, there, there, and into the trot was all in extension.
Yes.
And it's much better than it used to be because number one, she's safe to ride. So so that already tells you that the extension is not as severe as it used to be. Number two, she is easier to ride. She takes a light contact. She has steering. She has speed control. All of those things tell you she's not in extension to the same degree she used to be.
Right.
But the fact that she's unstable and sort of slightly shortening the neck, you're not really getting fluid forward motion. You don't feel the suppleness of the motion. And so that tells you she's in the last dredges of extension. She's in a mild version of her old problem. So what do? Get her out of it. And this is where allowing the horse to go into, because she sort of looks long and level, like, hang on, I can hear Joe talking. She sort of looks like she's in the posture of long and level, which looks similar to what we saw with finer things.
But not in her back.
But not really in her neck even.
Yeah. I mean, it
right?
just doesn't feel the same.
So do you see when she's walking how the upward lift of the head is greater than the forward
Yes.
thrust? You
Yes, I
see
see
how,
that.
yeah, that's what we mean by direction of force, right? So yes, she's close to, almost mimics the posture of basic balance, long and level, but the stiffness you feel, the rocking you feel, and the subtle use of the head pushing more backwards than it is pushing forward are all the indicators of a mild version of extension. So getting out of extension is just as important as when they're unsafe, high-headed, and bracing everywhere, because the direction of the spine is the direction. It's either going down or it's coming up. So what are some things you know to do to get a horse out of extension?
She seems to like the turns
Mm-hmm.
to help her. But she's still, she's so tough to
Even
have
on
her.
that turn, she maintained extension.
Yeah,
So this is like the same problem I've been discussing with Nancy and Julius, as well as Laura and Arrow.
Mhm.
This is such an easy place to get stuck when you're coming from more extreme problems where
And I
Callie
do
came
feel
from.
stuck. I
Yeah,
do feel stuck.
because it is better.
It's better, but it's not, now that I have finer things to compare it to, as soon as I get on Callie, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, this does not feel as
This
good,
is, and people might not see it like we see it,
right?
but
But
I
you
feel it.
definitely feel it.
I feel it.
Now, only there. And you see when she finally, let me back that up a second because that's important. Where are my tools?
And she finally let go.
That letting go, what she did when she let go, is the really important thing to notice. That is her talking to you.
Okay.
When she finally let go, where did she put her head?
Put it down.
Way down,
Yeah.
way down. So what that shows you is, I'm trying to get to my tools here. What that shows you is
There she started. Yeah.
that she needs, that if you're not getting an exaggerated long and low, you're probably still in extension
With her.
with
Totally
her,
agree.
and for now,
Yes.
because you realize that isometric holding, which is what we call the most mild version of extension, doesn't feel like basic balance.
No, it doesn't.
You recognize that there are problems. There's too much shaking of the saddle. The speed adjustments are not easy. Even though it's better, it isn't what you're feeling on finer things.
No, it's not.
Yeah. So I went backwards a little bit. We're just going to watch her again. And you see how 90% of this ride, she's in extension,
Yeah.
which you didn't realize when you were doing the video.
Well, it's always feels the same to me. You know what I mean? And I did ride her did I ride her first or second that day? I can't remember.
So there she, there, there. That's
That's it.
is,
Finally.
yeah. And you had to stop her. So this took a couple of seconds, right?
It's almost like she's an overthinker. You know what I mean? She's just
No,
intense.
what it means is she is not feeling, she's not feeling internally stable in her back and hindquarters enough to let go of the chronic shortening of the muscles. So that's her telling us that I don't feel stable in my back and hindquarters yet, which is why when you go on a turn and you change the leg placement, increasing the degree of engagement in the hind legs. That will help, right? So it's really not yet a matter of big changes through the braking and the pushing like it is for finer things going into trot. The mild version of extension tells us two things. We need to exaggerate our corrections to make sure, and exaggerate the postural change to make sure we're fully out of extension by not asking for too much flexion yet. We're going to focus on internal straightness, which is rotation and alignment, and look at maybe helping alter the leg placement, because that can be a factor.
I agree.
But at this point, I would want her out of extension and more consistent in an obvious long and low before I would play with increasing the braking or the pushing too much. So you'll need enough leg to say, don't stop. You'll need enough rein to say, let's go to halt. But I wouldn't work with like half transitions, like a half halt or a half push.
No,
I would use full transitions for anything related to helping her adjust the speed or the braking and pushing. And I wouldn't do it until she's in an obvious long and low. Right? So whenever they resort to this isometric holding, and usually it happens with horses that are strong, muscularly strong. She was just born strong.
She's massive.
She's got a lot of muscle to use. So it feels like less work to her. You know what I mean? Like the coordination of the spine for her is still the problem, where with finer things, you have the proper coordination of the spine, but she doesn't yet have the muscular strength. Callie's muscular strength is preventing the proper coordination of the spine.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So what happens, what she's doing, and this is why it's better, is because it's less shortening of the back and neck muscles, but the direction of the muscle is still towards concentric contraction, right? So that's what you have to completely shift her out of in order to get the lengthening or eccentric contraction related to flexion. So we're going to put flexion goes on the back burner for her for now.
Okay.
Okay. You're going to work on, well, there's a couple things we can do to, and especially when they adopt the posture of isometric holding, that version of extension, typically the thing that works best is circles with an outside bend.
Okay.
So tracking a circle is going to help her with any muscular tightness related to adduction, abduction of the legs, or engagement or leg placement. And then the outside bend a little or a lot until you feel her struggle, but she doesn't stop. If you bend the neck too much to the outside, she'll just stop.
So what would the struggle feel like? Just disorientation, don't know where her legs go?
That's a really good question. The struggle is you feel right away changes under the saddle.
Okay.
So from where you are now, back into long and low, with an outside bend, the reason I like that is because this horse is not as extreme as she was, right?
That's true.
So if you bend the neck too much in the direction of travel, what I find is you're always going to create inverted rotation, and the horse is going to push up on the inside seat bone.
Okay.
Okay. If bending to the outside is just impossible for her, then start with overbending the neck to the inside on a circle, just for the sole purpose of getting her to long and low.
To get to long and low. Okay.
So over bending the neck, whether it's in the direction of travel or away from the direction of travel, makes extension impossible. So
Okay.
you basically pull the neck so far out of alignment with the back that the back can't stay
Stay locked.
it can't stay in extension. Something has to change, right? So we exaggerate the dysfunction to interrupt the dysfunction.
Got it.
Okay. It doesn't really matter if you overbend the neck to the inside or overbend the neck to the outside. It's going to interrupt the dysfunctional extension either way. But what I find is very predictably, when we overbend the neck in the direction of travel, we always create inverted rotation to the outside of the direction of travel. So they push up on our inside seat bone. So if we overbend the neck to the inside, we know we have to put a lot of weight to the inside seat bone at the same time.
Okay.
To minimize the problem. But interestingly, and I cannot explain why this is, when I work with a circle with an outside overbending of the neck, it's sort of pot luck whether the horse is going to push on my inside seat bone or the outside seat bone.
Okay.
So it does something different. And it's most useful for where she's stuck in isometric holding. So overbending the neck to the outside while you track a circle from the saddle seems to sort of get a horse that's close to letting go of extension find a unique way that they need to do it.
Okay.
I don't know. It's just the randomness of the rotation. So too much rotation is always a side effect of overbending the neck. And I thought it was always inverted rotation. But when I ride horses with an outside bend on a circle, it's not always the inside seat bone. Sometimes it's the outside seat bone. So that got me thinking there's something else happening because you have a direction of travel, but you're overbending the neck away from the direction of travel. It's like they have to search more in their bodies. How do I do what she's asking? And that seems to create bigger changes. The other thing I feel is from isometric holding like this, when I work on a circle with outside bend, I feel the levelness of the saddle or kind of the stability of the hindquarter come before the long and low.
So if I'm trying to determine the size of the circle. So if I'm getting a lot of stopping, do I just make my circle bigger?
Yes.
Okay.
And less outside bend.
Just a little bit less. Now, I have noticed with her that she has an inverted rotation to the left.
And it's left whether you track left or right?
Yes.
Okay. So if you track right and the dorsal tips are left, that's inverted rotation. If you track left and they stay left, what you really have is stuck rotation.
She's stuck.
Okay.
Big time.
And you know that the dorsal tips are too far left because you feel the upward force on your right seat bone, correct?
So if I ask her to make a turn to the right, I can actually feel that rotation to the left. And she can barely do any lateral movement to the right, but she has no problem going to the left.
Yes. So, and it's just to clarify, inverted rotation always means the rotation is opposite the direction of travel, right, with the dorsal side, right?
Right.
When they're stuck, and this could be a huge problem and why she's resorting to isometric holding, is if the dorsal tips are stuck left, you're always going to feel the excessive muscular contraction pushing up on your right seat bone, no matter the direction. Okay.
Always.
So that means that she keeps, making sure I don't get dyslexic here.
Yeah.
That means the dorsal tips of the bones are too far left, but the muscular contraction is on the right.
On the right.
So
Mhm.
her right hind leg is going to be restricted and hard to step forward in engagement towards her center.
Yes.
Her left front leg is going to be the most restricted front leg, and it won't be able to reach in the direction of travel. So since you know that specifically about this horse, you're not going to do circle with an outside bend. You're going to give her a right bend of the neck, either direction.
Okay. Right. I'm going to write this down. Right bend to neck, either direction.
Right.
On the circle.
Because, and you feel that when you track right, she's very stiff. So you're going to bend, over bend the neck a little or a lot, as much as you can while maintaining forward on whatever size circle or turn you're making. But when you overbend the neck to the inside or to the right, it's going to not only pull her out of extension, but accidentally cause the inside hind leg to have to stride deeper.
Right. That makes sense.
Longer and more forward, right?
Yes.
Even if she's out of balance, you're going to cause the right hind leg to adduct more.
Got it.
By over bending the neck to the right, and you're going to have a massive amount of upward force on your right seat bone.
Okay.
Okay. So you're going to feel like you have 95% of your body weight to the inside when you track right, when you overbend the neck. As soon as she begins to pull on the right rein towards long and low, give her both reins. Your left rein is going to be useless both directions. It's all going to be resistance on the right rein. So when you track right, you're overbending to the inside until she starts to pull that rein downward.
Okay.
Then you let it go, let her have a loose rein, stay on your circle to the right with a straight neck if she's in an obvious long and low. She still needs to be tracking right to build up the coordination and strength on the right hind. So you don't leave the circle. You just only overbend the neck if she where she is here, which you're now recognizing as a mild version of extension.
Right.
Right. And when she pulls into an obvious long and low, you want no rein contact.
Just let her go.
Just let her go. Use enough left and right rein alternately to keep the neck centered to the back while you're on the circle.
Okay.
Okay. Then when you track left, that's where you're going to play with, you're still doing the same thing. It's still right rein, over bending the neck to the right, sitting on the right seat bone. The right seat bone won't have as much force, but you're still encouraging her to stay balanced and use the right hind leg while she tracks left.
Okay.
It's also, her steering is going to suck going to the
kidding.
left.
It's going to look really awkward.
She's going to fall in going left, and she's
Big
going to
time.
pull. She's going to try to avoid turning going to the right. So don't think about the accuracy of your circle right now for her.
We're just using the bend, the circle to get long and low.
Right. So if she goes into extension, spiral in on the circle and overbend the neck. As soon as she's in long and low, keep the neck straight and start spiraling back out.
Back out.
On your circle
that makes
to
total
make it
sense.
easier. Okay. So to the left with the neck bent to the right, she is going to fall in when she's leaning on the left shoulder. What I find is I just keep going the same direction. I turn into the problem she's already having.
Okay.
What happens is the circle will get tighter and tighter and tighter, and maybe even turn into a pivot on the spot until she, by accident, reaches in the left direction, abducting with the left front leg. Okay, so her leg goes the wrong way. Her habit is going to be to put the left front leg towards the midline or to the right when she turns left.
Okay.
So at first, she's going to lose control when you turn left with the neck to the right, and you're going to feel that problem exaggerated.
Yes.
But you'll also feel when she changes it. So you can sort of try to ask her straight from your seat and legs, but it's going to be a lot of force at first. So I just say, okay, you want to turn left? Let's turn left.
Okay.
So I just keep going the direction that they're already falling through anyways. And it'll get tighter and tighter and tighter. And then it feels like all of a sudden they just throw their leg out. I think because they sense that they're falling. They sense the loss of control because we're actually saying you're falling and I'm going to go in the same direction you're falling. So that exaggerates their sense of falling. And they kind of figure out pretty quickly, really, instead of falling, they're just going to throw that leg out the opposite direction from normal. And you will feel that from the saddle. The front legs are obvious when they change directions. The hind legs, not quite as obvious. So when you track left with a right bend, she has to figure out how to abduct or reach away from the midline in the direction of travel with her left front leg.
Okay.
And it's muscularly restricted, so there'll be a lot of chaos when you start doing this.
I can.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll videotape those days.
Yeah. But what you'll feel is when she has the reason she might be resorting to extension is just because of what you know, that she has rotation that is stuck left and not centered. So you have a relationship of muscular tension between her right hind leg all the way through her back, all the way to her left front leg. And she's using her neck to stabilize that chronic crookedness.
Yes.
Right. So if you specifically address that lateral imbalance, she will be able to lift her back. Right now, the rotation issue is what's preventing flexion. That's why she's holding on to extension.
Yes. It's a good way to put it, holding on to it.
Yeah, it's her only resort because unless the rotation is maintained upright, flexion of the spine is very difficult. Now, there are trainers that say flex the spine, which then straightens the rotation. That is theoretically true. What I found in practice is on a horse that is a little bit defensive, they get pissed off.
Yeah.
Going from extension to flexion directly.
I think she'd blow.
They kind of like going through the long and low. So the only thing long and low is going to do for her is give her a little bit of time to restore sort of the natural or neutral length of her muscles. Because even though this isn't the severe contraction shortening that she did when she was scared, it's a mild version of it. So she might need, I don't know, one ride or a week of riding in long and low before I would start asking the muscles to contract the opposite direction.
Right. Well, she's definitely will let me know if I'm asking too soon. That's for sure.
And I love that you have a rein contact with her because that was never possible before. So once she's in long and low, you'll be able to have rein contact on a long rein and probably develop proper flexion pretty quickly with her. Right. But she'll need as much time. What will happen is during the time you allow her to be with a straight neck in a deep long and low, you're going to feel her get more wiggly the longer she's there.
Yeah.
Right. She doesn't like being wiggly. But
not at all. It's that she's very insecure there. So
she might lose forward. Right. But you can be patient with her so she gains a little bit of confidence with her muscles feeling so different.
Yeah.
It's just because it's different. If you try to get to flexion faster than she's sort of prepared for, you're going to keep landing in extension.
Or worse.
Yeah. I don't think she'll blow up anymore. I think you're well
She just
past that.
blows. When she snorts and blows, that's usually when I know, okay, you need to be a little bit more careful with what you're asking.
Yeah. Warning.
Just a little warning.
Yeah.
So
Danger.
cool.
Danger. So now as I play through this video, do you see how it kind of looks like what you had on Finer Things, but it's not?
It's not.
It's now that we look at it, it's so much more obvious that she's in extension.
Mhm.
And you feel that when you ride, but
Oh,
sometimes we go, but I see long and level. What's the problem?
It
And that's
doesn't
where,
feel that way at all.
yeah, that's where you can get stuck. And even if you didn't have Finer Things, the feeling of what you're getting on Finer Things to compare, you would still know, because the saddle isn't stable, the steering isn't that easy, the speed adjustments are not easy and smooth. It's like it's all better than it once was, but particularly sort of knowing that the right is really hard and the left is easy, that means it's not basic balance.
Right.
Because in basic balance, the steering is equal and easy. The speed adjustments are equal and easy, and the saddle is stable. The rein contact is stable. So she still gets a little bit above the bit, loosening the reins. She's getting more comfortable with rein contact, which is much to your credit, but it's not a consistent rein contact because she's shortening the muscles of her neck and back.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that tells you this is not basic balance. So I would go back a step, work with right bend, try to get that rotation issue corrected. And when you truly correct it, she's going to plummet into long and low.
Okay.
And then let her have a little time there, depending on what you're feeling. Every horse has a different amount of time that they need to move in long and low with a rider before they're ready to really, really flex the spine. Some need only 5 minutes of it. Other horses need a week or two. Some horses that, ex-race horses, sometimes a month or more, right? So how they change the tone of their muscles is unique and we can't predict it.
Okay.
So focus on getting out of extension, getting the rotation issue corrected, which means equalizing your left and right directions. Don't worry about the speed. Worry if she's just in long and low, which only means out of extension.
Okay.
Okay. And when that's easy, and for her, for Finer Things, your big achievement is maintaining a long neck and her not dropping the pole and falling forward. So Finer Things is a little more of a front back issue than she is a left right issue. Callie is more of a left right issue. She actually has more power to give you speed or control her speed compared to your other horse. But she has a bigger problem where she's stuck with the rotation to one side.
Yes.
And that actually kind of comes full circle. It's typical that Finer Things' primary issue was more related to extension, which is what made her so wiggly side to side, but easier to stabilize left and right. All right. With Callie, or all stiff horses, her problem isn't really extension, although that's what she's resorting to. Her problem is rotation, right? Which makes one direction hard, the other direction easy. So this is how we start to sort of sleuth out what's the root cause of the problem for this unique horse. And it could be in any one of the spinal functions.
Yeah.
Right. But the stuckness of her rotation makes her feel stiff. The hyper rotation related to extension made Finer Things feel wiggly.
Yes.
So that's just to explain to you sort of what you're feeling and why each horse adopted the use that they adopted was based on their primary issue.
Yep.
Yeah, see there, it even takes her a minute at halt to sort of find that length. That was the release of the contraction. And then as soon as she does, she kind of plummets.
Yes.
As soon as she's moving, she looks like she's back up because she also shortened.
Yes, she did.
So that little accidental moment at halt is the whole picture. I don't want to go back too far. That's the whole picture in a nutshell.
Right.
And there's that force on your right seat bone.
Oh, big time.
Yeah. Yeah. So focus on controlling that because our body weight is really what most directly influences the function of rotation.
Okay.
More than our leg aids or our rein aids. That's why you can play with outside bend and create a misalignment and still improve the balance.
Okay.
Right. But that was a good moment on that turn where you could really see how much force is coming up against your right side. And then just here, after you halt, drop the reins and pet her, it's still taking her a second
to let it go.
To let it go.
I even see her standing in her stall, like in extension.
Oh, yeah.
Like parking out sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Because when they're in that chronic, when they're in a mild version of chronic extension, it actually feels better to just lengthen the muscles, whether the spine is down or up. Flexion, actually, the muscles are lengthened, but flexing the spine at the walk requires a ton of muscle contraction. It's just that the difference between extension and flexion is whether the back muscles are shortening and contracting, which is extension, or lengthening and contracting just as much, which is flexion. Right. So just letting her come out of the shortening use and find length again without asking them to work. That's the only benefit of long and low.
Right.
The muscular benefit. It's the only benefit is to let them recuperate from that chronic shortening use of the back and neck muscles. Any questions?
No, that's spot on for both of them.
Yeah, I'm glad we looked at them because you've really made some massive improvements with both horses. And Callie in particular is where so many riders, especially in competition, get stuck.
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah.
Because it feels better than the extreme version.
Yes.
And because it sort of looks right. Right. But there's something nagging at the rider. Right. There's always something nagging at the rider. You know, like my horse won't turn in your case. My right turns suck. My left turns, you know, feel easier, but I have to give a lot of support. Right. Or the horse can't adjust speed very easily, too fast or too slow. That's how we know, even if we have this posture, that we're not really working in balance.
Yeah.
Because we have speed adjustment issues or we have directional steering adjustment issues. So even if you didn't have finer things, I think you would still recognize that it was better, but not easy.
It's better, but it's not easy, and it just doesn't feel right. It just feels stiff, unaccessible. It just
good.
Cool.
So thanks. I think that gives you things to focus on.
Yes. I wrote them down too. So.
Oh, good.
Well, tape it to my forehead.
I will send you a link to the video.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so let's stop there. Good job, Deb.
Cool.